Hi everyone, Rose Thorne here. Making this video today because of something upsetting that happened to me about an hour ago. I had some errands to run today, some shopping to do. On the way home, I stopped by this local donut sandwich shop near my house to get a sandwich. I walked in, I placed my order with the lady behind the counter. She went to the back to make my sandwich, and while I was waiting for my sandwich, in walks this other lady. This older lady. She looked to be in about her 60s or 70s. She had this very rude, snobbish air about herself, which was pretty much confirmed when instead of just waiting quietly for someone to attend her, she leaned over the counter and she's like, "Hello." The lady who was making my sandwich in the back, she looked over at the older lady and said, "I'll be right with you, ma'am. I'm making a sandwich right now." The lady who was making my sandwich, she came out from the back to take a break from making my order, and she asked the older lady, "What would you like?" The lady wanted a small coffee and a big chocolate chip muffin the size of her head. No problem. She's there to get food. No problem so far. What she said after her order was the problem. She looked at the clerk and she didn't ask her, she told her to call the cops. She said, "There's a drunk sleeping outside your shop. You need to call the cops on them. You need to get the cops here right now." Telling the clerk what to do. God bless the clerk. She looked at the old lady and she said, "I'm not going to call the cops on that person. They're not bothering us. They're not bothering the shop. I'm not going to call the cops on them." The old lady kept insisting for the cops to be called. I couldn't keep my mouth shut, because I could not believe how absolutely rude and soulless this old woman was being. I had to open my mouth. I looked at her and I said, "There's no reason for the cops to be called. The person who's outside sleeping, they're not bothering you, they're not bothering me, they're not bothering the shop. Why do the cops have to get involved?" Just for the sake of reference, in reference to the person who was sleeping outside, you should know that the homeless person that this old woman was just in a rage about, a homeless person was not sleeping in the entranceway of the shop. She was nowhere close to the entrance. She wasn't at the entrance. She wasn't close to the entrance. She was sleeping on the side of one wall. The only way you would see that homeless person is if you're coming from one side to get to the other side to where the entrance was, you might see that person. That's the only way. That person who was in the sleeping bag was sleeping. They weren't talking to anyone. They weren't bothering anyone. They weren't being a nuisance. But for some reason, this old lady was in such a rage, she wanted the cops called. And she kept insisting, "Call the cops. There's a drunk out there. You got to get rid of him." I said, "There's no reason to call the cops. They're not doing anything wrong." To make a long story short, myself and this older lady, we got into a screaming match. And I do mean screaming. Raising voices, calling names, insults, the whole 9 yards. And why? Because I'm a person with compassion and understanding towards other human beings, and obviously she wasn't. Obviously this woman has no heart, has no soul, has no compassion. She's that kind of human being that if something looks unsightly, instead of just figuring, hey, it's not my monkey, not my circus, not my business, I'll just keep walking, she's going to make a big deal out of it. So her and I got into a screaming match. And I said, "Where's your compassion? Where's your understanding? That person's outside. They're not bothering you. You're just coming in here to get a quick coffee and a muffin and leave. What do you care if they're sleeping?" The old lady ended up not getting her order. She just left. I guess because she was angry that she wanted the cops called and the cops were not being called, and worse, the two people that were in the shop were not backing her up on what she wanted. They were in complete opposition. So she left. I was shaking from adrenaline. I was ready to throw down with her. I got my order and I left, but my head is still spinning that I encountered such a hateful, ugly human being. Absolutely ugly and hateful. That the sight of another human being sleeping on the sidewalk would cause them such distress, make them so angry that they actually want to call the cops on this other person who's doing them absolutely no harm. I do street photography. My main focus is the homeless. The neighborhood where I live in Long Beach, I see homeless all the time, everywhere, and I mean everywhere, sleeping everywhere. And I don't get angry about it because I understand you got to sleep wherever you can sleep at, wherever you feel safe. That's something that a lot of people don't understand. That if you see a homeless person and you see them sleeping out in the open, whether it's a park bench or a piece of sidewalk or up against a building, it's not because they want you to see them. It's not because they want to be a nuisance. It's all about survival mode. They're simply picking a place where they feel safe. When you don't have a home of your own and you have to find somewhere to sleep, you find the safest spot. And sometimes the safest spot is a public spot because there's less chance of being attacked. There's less chance of people robbing you, mugging you, stabbing you, whatever. Homeless people have to worry about other homeless people taking their stuff. They have to worry about gang members attacking them. They have to worry about all kinds of things that we, as people who live in houses and have nice lives, don't have to worry about. They're strictly in survival mode. So wouldn't it just be a good thing to not make their lives any harder than they have to be? Show compassion, show love, show understanding, rather than give hateful attitude where it's not necessary. That was the most disturbing part about my encounter with this woman, just her sense of just hatefulness, absolute hatefulness. You know, I can't even imagine what it would be like to sleep on a sidewalk at night in the cold or out in the elements. I can't even begin to imagine what it must be like, but I know it must be horrible. So why another human being would go after someone who's just taking a nap where they feel safe is beyond me. It's absolutely beyond me. Every single one of us, and I don't care who you are watching this video, every single one of us, we are closer to the homeless than we know. Because to go from having a life to being on the street, they live very close together. All it takes to go from having a life to being on the street is one lost job, one or two missed paychecks, one personal tragedy. It doesn't take much to topple everything over and to disturb the balance. You lose your job, you miss a few paychecks, you can go from having a home to not having a home. So treating the homeless as subhuman, looking at them as subhuman is incorrect, because no matter if you're wearing rags or not, you're still human and you still deserve decency, love, respect, and honor. I've met many homeless people, and some of them are wonderful people and they love to talk to you, and they like knowing that somebody still cares. And I guess when I got mad at that old lady, part of that came out. That's what fueled my anger. Was I've seen the homeless on the streets. I see them as humans who are just not doing as well as maybe other people are. And to see her attacking this innocent person who's not even hurting her, it just sent me into a rage. Maybe you guys agree with me, maybe you don't, but it's just really sad knowing that I live in a world where there should be more compassion and there isn't. There's still hateful people in the world that look at homeless people as specks of dirt that should be swept into a corner and forgotten about. You know, that any public place, they're not supposed to be there. Homeless people should be invisible and not seen or heard. So that's my point of view. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I just wanted to share that experience. And thank you for listening and have a great day.